A lot of this is also belied by the whole mint the coin discussion, much of which that you have seen over here. And I will just say that some mint the coin advocates have completely beclowned themselves over the weekend. Our friend Jeff Stein actually reached out to two of those leading theorists behind the mint the $1 trillion coin. They're big modern monetary theory activists about some of the concerns that you've been hearing from the White House. And I think it is conceptually, I'm cool with the idea of mint the coin.
Yeah.
That said, if this is how it is, I'm out. So let's go ahead and put this up there on the screen. So here's what Stein asks some of these, Rohan Gray and Nathan Tankus. Here's what he says. I'm getting unilateral options from pushback from the administration officials. Here's what they are concerned about in the event of a mint the coin. Let's say the coin happens. Then the GOP says that it's BS, and it leads to an immediate court challenge and legal uncertainty. Then the Treasury goes to market with auction at some point, but because of the uncertainty bondholders demand is a high premium, leading to much higher federal borrowing costs, four conservative courts could strike down that coin, forcing the White House back to negotiate with the GOP in an even weaker position. I'm sure you guys have thought about this, so let me know what the response is. Here is what Rohan Gray says. The answer is ignore SCOTUS. I know that sounds extreme, but if they side with Gates, then the choice is to ignore them or default. Demand that the Fed accept the coin. Send troops to the Fed.
Oh my God.
The constitutional monetary moments that are analogous to this are Lincoln and FDR. It's hardball or it isn't. If SCOTUS is forcing the Prez to ignore the 14th Amendment, literally the Civil War Amendment, to support white supremacists trying to shut down the government. So there's a lot going on there. Effectively, he's saying that it's like a Civil War type thing when Lincoln ignored the orders of the Supreme Court around habeas corpus. I don't think we're exactly in a similar situation. Also, let's just put it this way. Is Joe Biden going to do any of that?
Well, yeah.
No.
Even
if you agree, even if you think that this is a feasible strategy, which I think that's insane and actually would probably spark even less faith and credit in the United States economy. That's the road that we had to go down to pay our debt. Well, that's obviously just not going to happen. So increasingly, Krystal, and I do have to say, what Stein, the pushback that he's laying out there, specifically about the court striking down the coin, you and I both know that's very within the realm of the possibility. The third one is actually an important point too, that if Treasury goes to market with the auction, but because of the uncertainty that bondholders demand a higher premium, as in if the market doesn't believe that it's a real enough auction,
right,
that even if you mint the coin, you're still in a technical default. So
That's
it's
right.
like, the more I'm looking at this, even though conceptually if everyone bought into the idea, I just don't think it's feasible. I don't think it's going to work. The White House has no choice but to negotiate.
I thought that, honestly, these were reasonable concerns that were raised. Because ultimately, if there's a lot of uncertainty over whether or not this coin will be upheld, and given the makeup of the Supreme Court, I think is a decent chance that it would not be upheld, then you're effectively in the same position as before. So you guys know I've been an advocate of this as well. But looking at not only the reasonable concerns that were raised, but also the response to those concerns, as you put it, Saagar, listen, bottom line, whether you think this is the right path or not, there is no way in hell that Joseph Robinette Biden is going to nullify the Supreme Court and send troops to the Fed. And not going to happen, guys. So this is not a feasible option. Also, by the way, there's comments out from Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen this morning saying that they are not going to go in this direction. She says it truly is not by any means to be taken as a given that the Fed would do it, referring to that the Fed would actually do this or accept this. And I think especially with something that's a gimmick, she said in a Sunday interview with the Wall Street Journal, she also said the Fed is not required to accept it. There's no requirement on the part of the Fed. It's up to them what to do. Now, listen, I think strategically, it's probably not wise to just totally pour cold water on the idea in terms of their own negotiating position. I think that's probably a foolish move to ultimately make. But basically, guys, this is not a real option. Not with this president, not in this moment. So how is this going to get resolved? I genuinely do not know.
I think I know. I think they're going to go to sequestration. They're going to agree to a hell of a lot of budget cuts, and there's going to be a ton of discretionary spending cuts outside of the military and outside of Social Security. Hate to say it very much will impact a lot of people, but I don't see any way out of that. One Republican pushing back, though, his name, and he's always had the best political instincts, is Donald John Trump. Put it up there on the screen. Trump is actually watching with dismay. He's like, hey, do not touch Social Security or Medicare in this debt ceiling fight. You guys got to remember, back in 2015, this was a huge debate between Trump, the Paul Ryanites, the Mitt Romneys. They ran on cutting entitlement programs. Trump, as 100%, was against it in 2015. It's one of the things that made him more of an economic moderate than a lot of the other opponents in the GOP primary. And his political instincts on this, look, one thing you could say about Trump, the man knows boomers, and he understands them very well as one himself, and you do not mess with those people's Social Security.
Yeah.
It's like the one thing, it's the most popular political program in the entire country, period, especially amongst people who vote.
The two areas where he seems right now to have the best feel for the broader electorate are on this, which, I mean, he's very unequivocal here. Under no circumstances should Republicans vote to cut a single penny from Medicare or Social Security. So no hedge, no anything, just very unequivocal. And then the other place where he has had a far better instinct and touch than most of the rest of the Republican Party is on abortion. I mean, he immediately knew after Roe versus Wade, there were reports coming out after it was overturned that he felt like this was going to be a disaster for Republicans. He was correct. Now, part of his talk about this post-election is to absolve himself of any blame for the poor Republican performance in the midterm elections. But yeah, I thought this was a little bit of an echo of the old 2016 Trump, which frankly, we don't hear from a lot these days. These days, it's mostly like, you know, obsession over the election and like flirtation with QAnon and things that are far too online and far too like niche and in this one little ideological bubble. This was a bit of a return to, oh yeah, I remember why number one, people thought he was more moderate than Hillary Clinton. That's a big part of why he ultimately got elected and why he was such a break from the mold in 2016 within the Republican primary.
I think it bears saying that actually puts Trump to the left of Obama. Obama was ready to cut Social Security and entitlements in 2015. So that means Joe Manchin and Donald Trump are now to the left of President Obama on Social Security.
Well, Joe Biden,
Medicare.
If throughout his career, maybe not today, maybe not today, we're going to see, we're about to find out. But, you know, he floated cuts to Social Security many times throughout his career. Something that he got hit on in the Democratic primary is actually quite effective leading into the Iowa caucuses, and I think was part of why he performed so poorly there ultimately. So, yeah, we'll see where Biden is today. We'll see his fortitude in his willingness to hold the line and not negotiate and, you know, not give in to what the Republican demands are here. But we're covering this a lot because it is actually important. Like, this isn't one of these fake crises, fake like panic attacks in Washington. The truth is no one really knows how this would all go down. You know, maybe it wouldn't be as much of a disaster as people think, but there's a possibility of real catastrophe. And I keep going back to that moment in the UK, you know, when the mini budget gets released from Liz Truss, and there's just a free fall moment because things are much more intertwined and it's so complex that no one really has a full picture of how these things all cascade and what the impacts will ultimately be. So, you know, if you're playing with default, you're playing with exactly that type of catastrophic collapse, unforeseen collapse, based on the complexity of the financial system. It's really not something you want to mess with, guys.
You do not want to mess with it, especially because, look, I don't care if rich people lose their money, but I do care whenever normal people are not able
people
to get paid
lose their
jobs.
A recession means
that's
people
what I care the most about.
Lose their jobs, lose their livelihoods, fall into depression,
people kill
commit
themselves
suicide. Exactly. So
Yeah.
this is not something to play around with.
Yeah.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Saagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.